some of these speakers have been saying we need to stand up and be heard. And I do the very best I can to tell the truth the best I can. Now, I mentioned a moment ago I was born in 1932. Me, the drought, the dust, and the depression all came along at the same time. And for years I'd say, you know, times have gotten better all of my life. And that was up until about 15 years ago. When I was 16 years old, my parents had both died, and I inherited the home farm. So I started farming at a fairly young age, and I went to the great grain factory at the University of Missouri. There I was told that if I was going to succeed, I was going to have to get bigger, more efficient, or else get out of farming. Now, it's kind of interesting here because that's what my college professor told me. I have here, and I didn't get this in time, but this is a program called an Adaptive Program for Agriculture, written by the CED, which is the Committee for Economic Development. I have all of the members that helped write this. It's in here. They're made up of most of the multinational corporations. And they said in this document, on one of the pages here, it goes, the choice before us is control of farm production. We are recommending to induce excess resources, people primarily, to move rapidly out of agriculture. My wife and I have bought, over the years, and it was easy to do, we bought about 6 or 7 farms. I never did want any land if it didn't join me. So we expanded quite nicely. And when I started out buying land, I could mortgage my original farm because it was debt-free. I inherited it. And I bought the first farm that joined me for $50 an acre. And in a few years, farm prices increased, and I bought the next one for $100 an acre. But it was easy to do because I could mortgage the first one. By the way, what this gentleman that was up here just a while ago didn't tell you about borrowing money, when the feds, the banks, just print this money out of thin air. You go in to borrow this $100,000 house, he said, borrow the money for it, and they give you this, you sign this promissory note for $100,000. They don't give you any money for the interest. Everybody that has borrowed money, none of you got the interest. So that interest is not out there. So in order for you to pay off that mortgage or that note, somebody else has to not do that. Or we've got to come up with the money, and this is one of the reasons why we owe these trillions of dollars, as we talked about today. But they do not account for the interest when you borrow the money. Now go back to the farm deal. The second farm we bought was $100 an acre. I refinanced. Then we refinanced again, and we bought another farm, and we refinanced again because land prices kept going up in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And eventually we got to the point that the highest price farm I bought cost $355 an acre. And that was back in the 70s. And by 1985, we had those notes paid down to where we didn't owe but $700 an acre on that land. Now, I'm not alone, people. And back in the 1980s, I can't remember the exact year, but close to 1985, in the early 80s, one year we paid $30,000 in interest. That was at 6%. And that way we could get along with what we were doing. We had cash flow, we could do that. The next year, interest had gone to 18%, and they wanted us to pay $90,000 in interest. and farms were lost all over the United States. And had I not had another business that I could sell, we would have lost the whole shooting match. But this is the way the economy has been operating since 1913, when the feds came up with the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, and Woodrow Wilson signed that thing on Christmas Eve, by the way, for whatever it's worth, when they knew there was nobody there. Now go back to this adoptive program for agriculture. These multinational corporations had this plan way back in the 1950s. Because I went to college in 1949, and my economics professor in agricultural economics said that he told us what was happening. Well, after I got this book, I found his name in the front part of it. He was one of those who helped develop this plan. They had it all planned. They're going to keep farm prices. They're going to, through subsidies, they're going to keep farm prices below cost of production. They planned that. And I look at what's happening today, and I remember the farm crisis quite well. I've watched the markets, and for years I was a market reporter on the radio. And I watch these markets, and I see what's happening today when this economy broke like it did. We talk about it, and I see this all the time. Oh, buy a house now because houses are cheap. I don't think houses are cheap at all. I watched hog prices, when Smithfield, which they're the big multinational corporation, they have control of the hog markets now. When they started taking over, they started buying slaughtering plants and destroying them, so there would be no more places to slaughter hogs. Hogs went from 60 cents a pound down to 6 cents a pound. If a $100,000 house is selling for $80,000, is that a bargain? I look for them to come all the way down to, I don't know how far down. I've watched it happen in grain prices. I've watched it happen in livestock prices. Then when 1985 came along, interest went to 20%. Land that was selling in our neighborhood now for $1,000 an acre, they couldn't get a $200 an acre bid on it.